Wow. Thank you, Allison, MJ, and Mark. This is a dream come true. 400 captive people ready to share their stories out loud. Like, that's, to me, what this has been all about. I've been on this journey with Hologic since 2017, working across all divisions with everyone from field service engineers to finance people, to engineers, to R&D, to HR, and to have the opportunity to help salespeople and sales leaders get better so that you can make more of an impact on the world. Well, I am thrilled to be here, especially when it's all about the pursuit of excellence. And stories were woven into everything you heard. I've never heard a CEO tell such an interesting story about stocks and graphs. Can we give a shout out? I was blown away. I went to law school because I can't do math, so I don't really like numbers unless they're big numbers at the end. So just like you salespeople. And then to hear the stories that Jen Schneider's and MJ and Doug told about their journey and the collaborative leadership session that went on. And I'm sure in the oncology session, you're hearing great stories about the impact that you're making. Hologic makes a difference around the world, all of you across divisions, by pursuing excellence. And it's interesting because when I think of excellence, it's actually one of my core values, and it's really important to me. Excellence is defined for me as accountability, showing up the way I'm going to, and always striving for the greater heights. Because I love this quote by Michelangelo: the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but it's too low and we reach it. That's why I love what Doug said, which was, listen, it's about pursuing excellence in 2023, but that's in the rearview mirror. It's ultimately about what we're going to do to drive 2024. And one of the ways you're going to do that is by going out on the edge and being courageous and unconventional, a word that Steve used today. I love that. And by doing it with discipline, unity, and excellence is the baseline. Because if you don't strive for it, you will never reach it. It's interesting. My business is called The Edge, Sherman Edge, because, well, my husband says I'm edgy, because he's from Geneva, New York, not Switzerland, which is a real bummer. And I'm from Staten Island. Any Staten Islanders out there? Thank you, Pete Davidson and Colin Jost, for putting us on the map. But I'm very edgy. But it's interesting. I go around the world speaking to leaders to push them to the edge of their comfort zone, to have the courage to share a story that they wouldn't necessarily tell. And the thing is, I'm terrified of edges. Like, literally, bunny hills make me quake. I don't like to go up them, and I certainly don't like to go down them on a pair of sticks. And I thought to myself, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to speak to leaders across South Africa and Nigeria. And I thought, well, this is really funny. I am a liar. I tell people to go to the edge, but I don't push myself out of my comfort zone. And I landed in Cape Town, South Africa, and there's this incredible mountain, and it's called Table Mountain. It looms over the city. And the whole time I was there, people kept saying to me, have you been to the top of Table Mountain? And I'm like, no, I'm a little busy. Like, have you taken the Lion's Head Trail? Because, you know, people have died when they've gone up that trail. And I'm like, no way I'm taking that Lion's Head Trail. Then they told me to take the funicular and that it revolves in a 360-degree turn. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm not doing that. But I thought, I can't be a liar. I can't tell you to go to the edge of your individual leadership and your collective leadership if I don't do that myself. So on the very last day of my trip, I took that funicular and I was holding the pole as it revolved in a 360, I'd like to say in Las Vegas, it's pole dancing of a different kind, terrified, okay? And I go up and I stood out, and when I stopped screaming and opened my eyes, I felt like I could touch the sky. That's where the possibilities are. If you don't pursue excellence, go to the edge of your leadership, do something that's different or uncomfortable, you're not going to have that moment where you see possibilities, where you make possibilities, and where you are the possibility. Now, I note that I wasn't an idiot. There is one leg down. Do you see that? Right? And I had a metaphorical bungee cord attached to me. My family, depending on how they felt about me that day, I could have gone either way, right? Push or pull. But I survived that, and I doubled down on my mission, which is to help people remember that the messenger matters. Now, I've told that story before to about 100 of you in this room. And here's the thing. I'm different, you're different, and our stories bear repeating. We share our stories so that we can learn about each other. You learn something about me, that I'm a scaredy cat, but I'm vulnerable, I'm honest, I want to build trust with you. I want you to know that I'm willing to go out on that limb with you to grow and to keep changing and to keep pursuing excellence. And the power of story is about the feeling that you get from the story, right? It's about showing, not telling. Now, I'm talking to a group of people. You all know a great story when you feel one, and you probably already tell great stories. So what we're going to do today, and what I hope is a 400-person story-sharing rally, is we're just going to sharpen the saw. We're going to get more intentional about our stories. We're going to use discipline, unity, and excellence to broaden the stories that you share and to write a new story for the future of diagnostics, hologic, and women's health in the world. Now, I could tell you about the power of story. These guys have all said it better. Robert McKee is the guy who fixes all of Hollywood's scripts when the story isn't working. Marshall Gans teaches at the Kennedy School, and he says that stories not only teach us how to act, they inspire us how to act. And they are the most powerful weapon in a leader's arsenal. And according to my definition, storytelling is a means for the transfer of energy. George Saunders, who's one of our greatest fiction writers and a professor at Syracuse University, said that, and I thought, that's exactly right. It's the currency of leadership, but it's the kinetic connection that allows you to build trust with your audience, to get them to understand who you are, who we are, and ultimately how we can make an impact together. Because to me, energy and leadership is about unleashing other people's energies, right? Your clients, the patients you serve, and each other. And all of you are leaders at every level, no matter what you do, because this is not about hierarchy. Every one of you is a leader because you have the ability to communicate a vision and gain commitment to it. Emotional commitment, right? Data doesn't change people's minds. Emotions changes people's minds, right? So it's the story behind the data. It's the story behind the graphs. It's the stories that you heard that make you connected. Even though we're in a massive room, it feels like we're in a small circle around a fire. Anthropologists have studied, you know, the old caveman telling the story. Well, it turned out that was a safety net. We're all sitting together so we know where everyone is. Yeah, the guy standing might have been captured by the bear, but he was also the one who captured people's attention. This goes back in our DNA so far. So the power of story, ultimately, allows you to be the most powerful person in the room and make an impact. So, there's science behind this, and I do think this is important since I'm speaking to people for whom the science of sure, and I loved the idea that there's trust and credibility in your products and the long game that you're all playing. So Dr. Paul Zak, who is a researcher on trust, studied what happens to our brains when we hear a story. And I used to say, oh, that's when, he said oxytocin is released, but I thought he said OxyContin, but it's oxytocin. And that is the love hormone, the love hormone. People want to stay connected to someone that they trust when they hear a story of hero, conflict, resolution. Dr. Melanie Green is a researcher on communications. She proved that emotions are, unfortunately in some cases, more convincing than facts. But you got to have the facts to bolster the emotion. And then basically, stories are just more interesting. We want to pay attention to the storyteller. So consider this. Who could tell me what is a story? I get lots of people, they raise their hand and they go, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It makes me feel something. It makes me trust you. Here's a story. A story is a narrative that feels real to the teller and the listener, That's why you can put yourself into the shoes of the storyteller and go on a journey with them. That's why, as Steve told the story of the graphs, we wanted to go on that journey, the story of human grit, the story of the long game of Hologic. A story has to feel real. It is not a data dump. It's not an explanation. Words are just words if we don't pull them together to give the present to our audience of the perfect story. I like to call it story sharing versus storytelling, and I'll tell you why. Storytelling reminds me of my mother wagging her finger at me, right? and telling me a story so I'd learn better and have a lesson. Story sharing feels inclusive. It creates a wider circle. It connects you to your audience in a deeper way. So, what's my story? And Allison gave you a little bit of a hint. This is me in my cornfield in upstate New York, where I actually did write a column called The Suburban Outlaw, thus the Steerhead. But I got to make fun of my husband in print. It was a fabulous job. We're married almost 40 years. He's still married to me, and he helps me write the stories. He's like, that's not funny enough, and that didn't really happen. So we have a lot of fun with that. But the story really starts in the 2nd grade. Growing up on Staten Island, I dreamed of being an actor. So I would play piano with the door wide open and hope that a wandering talent agent would hear me sing and cast me on Broadway. Why are you laughing? Don't they do that? And I came from a very traditional family. My dad was an OBGYN, and my mother was a Freudian psychoanalyst. Very confusing growing up. If I had a headache, my father would say, take 2 aspirin, and my mother would say, who are you mad at? So for them, being an actor was really not the path that they wanted me to take. So I thought I would go to law school because it would be just like being a lawyer on TV. It's not. A funny thing happened on the way to my safe career as a lawyer, and my law firm went out of business. And I was profiled in People magazine. This is really what I wanted. I didn't want to be on Broadway. I wanted to be in People magazine for ditching my day job to pursue my dreams of being an actor, which just goes to show you about the credibility of journalists, because my law firm went out of business. I didn't ditch my day job. It ditched me. And all of a sudden, I started getting phone calls after this article came out. One of them came from the head of training at the Department of Justice, Antitrust Division. And she said, can you help make my lawyers more interesting? And I said, no, and hung up the phone. But I started to think about what makes an actor believable. Why are you willing to go on a journey and believe that Tom Cruise is actually tall, right? It's because he's a great storyteller. Actors are great story sharers. They understand how to bring you in, have you suspend your disbelief, and go on a journey with them. They realize that the messenger matters. How they play the role and how they perform makes a difference. So I started getting to do this, not only with those lawyers at the Antitrust Division, but with leaders all over the world, from Cincinnati to Saudi Arabia, from Morocco to Milwaukee, and every place in between. And I can tell you that leaders all over the world want what you want. They want to make connections, they want to make an impact, and they want to make a difference with who they are and the products that they put out in the world. My favorite question asked, now that I've told you that I'm an actor, nobody asks where I practice law. They all want to know, have I seen you in something? If anybody knows this movie, does anyone know the movie The Replacements? Okay, Google sexy cheerleaders. I'm not one of them. I played the shocked mom, the part I get to play in real life now all the time. And yes, Allison shared with you that I went back on stage. This is me playing the role of someone that most of you have not heard of, but she was the most prolific columnist of her time, telling stories about what it was like to be a housewife in Dayton, Ohio. She rose to such heights that she was on Good Morning America, she was in over 900 newspapers, and she was an advocate for women to get equal pay and equal rights. I decided to go back on stage, and I'm busy doing what I do, helping leaders all over the world, because I wanted to remind myself of what it was like to take on a role, be believable, and make it authentic, and tell people a story that they didn't really know, and to do it in Ohio, where Irma was from. It's interesting. What I discovered is that we are suffering in this world from really a believability gap. Often we don't believe in ourselves. We might lack some confidence. And often we're trying to get others to believe in us, to believe in our products, to believe in each other as a team. And I started thinking about what actors really do. And this is my definition of acting. They're not pretending. Acting is behaving truthfully under given imaginary circumstances. Well, frankly, isn't that what we want from our leaders? We want them to tell us the truth, to be credible, to be believable, and we want to take that, internalize it, and in turn, unleash it on the world. Stories help you bridge the believability gap. They will help you make more sales when you're intentional and specific about it, and they will help you create a greater, what I loved what Steve called virtuous circle, making an impact with the Foundation for Women's Health on patients around the world. It's a long game. You have a lot of stories to share, and you have a lot of stories to develop and craft and put out into the world. So let's take the leap across the edge. That is a terrifying picture. I don't know how that got up there. And get into the storytelling meat of it. We're going to explore what makes a great storyteller, how they tell great stories, and how you can become that great storyteller. We're going to dream and understand that the stories of our past illuminate our path to the future. We're going to understand how stories grow a team. And then we're going to turn it around, turn the lights on, and have you all, and that's why you're sitting in your zip codes, because you actually might see this person at the grocery store, so pick your stories carefully. You're going to have a chance to craft some stories and walk out of this room, and suddenly, at cocktail hour tonight, when someone says, "Tell me about yourself," you won't do it with a data dump. You'll do it with a story. So let's make some story connections. So we all know great storytellers. We just saw a bunch of them on stage this morning. We certainly saw Steve McMillan. And by the way, I've worked with teams across Hologic. When I ask people who's the best storyteller, they always mention Steve McMillan. But when we think about great stories, these are some of my favorite story sharers. I think Malala is the story sharer of her generation. Obviously, Steve Jobs and what the Apple team does. This year at the new product launch, they told stories of people's lives who were being saved by their Apple Watch. It was riveting. Go and try and watch that video. I love Warren Buffett. He says the best sales leaders and sales teams were people who delivered newspapers when they were children because they understand profit and loss and receivables and accounting, and they run their own business. They know their product, and most important, they know collections. So thank you to everybody in the finance team here. So we think about these story sharers. What makes them great story sharers? Well, first of all, they know who they are. They've done the test of self-awareness. A great story sharer knows who they are at the core, and I like to say they know what their power words are. Now, we've heard a lot of power words today, right? We've heard unity, discipline, excellence. We've heard unconventional. We've heard, even Doug Donovan shared his core values. Does anybody remember what they were? What is it? Honesty, trust, accountability. So the first exercise for you all to do is to identify these words. One, who are you at the core? What's the one word that defines who you are? I know it's a very reductive exercise. You all have pads and pens, and you actually have room for crafting your stories. I want you to write down that word. So my word is energy. Do you agree? Because this is after lunch, by the way. And I'm on East Coast time, so I just want to say. So write your words down, share them around the table. All right, I don't know how I'm going to get you back, but this is just one word. Is anyone, by the way, I didn't give you the rules. It can't be situational, late, tired, hungry, you know? And you have to have self-awareness. There's always the guy in the room, he says he's inspirational, and everyone at the table's going, yep, that's not the word I would use, right? So can you throw out some words? My hearing's still good. Anybody want to share their one word? Passionate, reliable, positive, resilient. Nobody ever picks a crappy word about themselves, right? We don't want to show up like that. Now, I know this is a strengths-based organization. I'm so proud to be a woo, in case you didn't know. Yeah, where are my woos in the room? Like literally all the salespeople. But values are different. Strengths are what you're good at. That's what shows up. I like to identify what's important to you. So we don't have time to do it today, but I want you to think about what are 3 core values that might represent you. You've heard a lot of different ones bandied about. It could be trust. It could be credibility. It could be excellence. It could be discipline and unity. Think of what those words are and write them down. Because, by the way, they will allow you to have a launching point of a story about you that can be relevant to your clients, what you value, what's important to you. The next thing, great storytellers know their audience. A story isn't told in a vacuum, and you are not you in a vacuum. You've got to balance everything with this. Now, my marketing people, my sales people, you all know what this means. Does everyone know? What is it? Oh, you could say it louder. Your audience is a little narcissist, and they don't really care about you. They want to know what's in it for me. Your story has to have an objective for this audience at this time. You have to think about that as you choose your stories. So, great story sharers know who they are. Great story sharers know who their audience is, and they choose the story based upon the need that they're trying to meet. Great story sharers know how to perform a story. Now, that's not about, I'll never forget walking in and working with a sales leader, and she said, I worked with someone like you. I had to work with this coach, and sales were down, and she wanted me to go into the sales meeting and say, sales are down, so people wouldn't believe me. And I said, well, how did you feel? She said, ridiculous. I said, what did you want to do? She said, sales are down, but they're going to get better. She wanted to move towards the audience, to be natural, to be who she was. Body language counts. Tone and manner count. What are you going to emphasize? I listened to Steve McMillan and watched how his voice changed when he started talking about grit, when he started speaking with the incredible passion around logic and the impact that you make in the world. You get to decide how you're going to perform your story. Now, the most important thing is recognizing that it's okay to be expressive. You know, if people cry, the hounds of hell do not take you down through the stage. You survive. You show you're human. You connect to your audience. And it's okay to be emotional and to share your emotion with your audience. I mean, would you ever tell a story? Does anyone have small children? How many of you have to read a book to them at night? And they ask you to do it with the voices. Play all the parts. My children asked me not to because they knew I was an actor and they really wanted to go to bed. So you can't be as expressive as you think you are if you don't try and be expressive at all. It's okay to be expressive. What enlivens numbers, data, is the messenger telling the story around it. So great story sharers are expressive. When you own the story, you own the room. Who owns the room right now? No, we do. When you own the story, you own the room because you own it together. When I'm sharing a story, it's a conversation where the other side just doesn't talk. But they're having a conversation with me because they're experiencing the story, they're feeling the story. So remember, as you want to become great story sharers and you practice your stories, know who you are, put who you are out into the world. Know your audience, know what's important to them and why that story is the right one for them. And then ultimately, perform your story and know that voice and body language count. Who hates public speaking here? I'm talking to a group of salespeople. Thank you for raising your hand. The rest of them are liars, by the way. Because, by the way, and I love this Seinfeld joke, it's a fear greater than death, and that means that the person eulogizing the person in the coffin is more afraid than the dead person. So one way that you can own the room is by recognizing that you need to take center stage, even if it's in a Zoom call, and share your story with confidence. Confidence is within the story share. One of the ways I do that, and Jen mentioned it, is a power pose. And I literally was standing back here doing my power pose before I went on. I used to do this downstairs, and I would love to do it all with you. Because through this power pose, I want you to all stand up. This is the perfect time for it. I get the time after lunch, right? I want you to imagine that it's Carnegie Hall, you've just finished a great performance, or you're Taylor Swift. Any Taylor Swift fans? Yeah, thank you. You took center stage, and you put your hands up. Go ahead, do it. Apparently, you're supposed to hold this for 2 minutes, and this is the research of Amy Cuddy, that when you do this, it releases the power hormone, which they tell me is testosterone, in your body. And my feeling is that it's not that. It's the power of feeling confident and that you have a light shining on you and that you're shining your rays on your audience. When you own the room and you own the story, you shine your rays on your audience. Go ahead, wave your hands for the picture, and now you can all sit down. Okay. So I told you that we were going to dream. Great story sharers know how to visualize, just as great salespeople know how to visualize. You see the number, you see success, you see having that pink ribbon or whatever it is that you have on your tag next year. But great story sharers also have a vision. And it is the essential means for focusing attention on what matters most, who you are at the core and what kind of leader you wish to be. So sharing stories of vision is critically important. This is a quote from, well, me. A dream is a story that just hasn't happened yet, so you get to write it. So you have to craft your vision story. You're all going to leave here on Thursday, and I hope that when you walk away, you're going to have a vision story that you can tell. I'm looking back, it's next year at NSM. What's the story that I'm going to share about the year that I've had, the success I've reached, how I got there, and who I did it with? But you also need to know stories from the past illuminate your path to the future. So you've got to know the stories from the past that will make an impact on your vision. So you've got to be a story thinker, and I love this. You have to practice your stories, you have to write them down, and you have to collect them. So every time you have a difficult sales call, you've got to track that too. The stories that you heard today are stories of leadership journey, but you've got to know the stories that are going to make a difference for you on your journey. So you've got to become a story thinker. Marshall Gantz talks about the fact that you need to know only 3 stories. And I got a chance to work with the global service team. I was had a call with Mark Horvath, and he said to me, "Are you going to be teaching the SUN method of storytelling?" And I said, "I have no idea what you mean. I'm going to be teaching the Pam Sherman methodology." And then I realized he was talking about Marshall Gantz. The story of self. Who are you? Yes, personal stories that make a difference for that audience are okay. It's about what does it mean for this audience to understand me. The story of us. What are our shared values? What's our collective story that we need to share with the world about Hologic and about the diagnostics team? And then the story of now. You have a call to action that Jen and MJ and Doug gave you from the stage, which is to pursue excellence every day with discipline, unity, and excellence as a standard. You have the strategy and you know how to do it. Well, there's a story from the past that reveals that call to action and where you need to go. So this is it. The 3 stories you need to know.